That was
You're looking at caller ID, right?
that
sure.
was exactly my response, because I thought it was Dr. DeBella down the hall. I said, Gary, I haven't had time for this. I'm in the middle of writing neuropsych evaluation. He said, no, I'm telling you, this is Steven Spielberg, and I really have read the fifth grade, and I want to talk to you about it. And I basically told him to go screw himself and hang up. You know, in retrospect, it might not have been the best thing to do.
No, actually, it's a negotiating technique.
But, you know, the phone rang again about 10 minutes later, and she came in and she said, well, you know, those DreamWorks people are back again. And I said, well, what do they want? She goes, well, they don't want to talk to you. Why are they calling then? She said, well, they want you to call and collect in New York. I said, well, fine. That phone number sat on my desk for about 20, 30 minutes, and finally I looked at it and said, oh, fine. Picked it up. And I called, and they said, SKG DreamWorks. I said, oh, God.
I hung up on Steven Spielberg.
He was actually pretty nice about it.
So imagine they call up people, they probably get a lot of that.
I was at the UGA homecoming one year, and the reason that I went there was purely because Bill Cosby was going to be there. And he did this 30, 40-minute Cosby thing that I've never seen before or since, that was about getting his daughter into college. That was just, I mean, rolling on the floor laughing almost the whole time. But the one part that I really loved was his daughter had been going to a community college, and they could be going to all these parties, and they're like, oh, our daughter's at Yale, our daughter's at Harvard. Where's your daughter at? You know, Swanee Community College. So his wife is like, we have to get her into a real university. He's like, okay, fine. Hi. Yeah, is this the president's office for an unnamed Northeastern University? Hi, yeah, this is Bill Cosby. You know, and it's like, you know, no, really, it's Bill Cosby. Noah. Yes, it's really Bill Cosby. I suspect that it happens a lot when they have to cold call people.
That's what happened to me. We went to the Friars Club up in New York, and Stevie was making a speech. They were honoring some director, and you look out on the audience and said, oh, I look out here and I see actors and directors and lighting people and gaffers, and you know, there was a writer sitting back, you know, this writer's here. See a fellow in the back over there? Like, that's Mitchell Graham. He's one of our new writers. Doing a movie for him. And they, you know, laugh. He said, you know, I offered him a job. He told me to go screw myself.
Oh no, that would definitely be a time limit.
People didn't say that.
It's a negotiating technique.
Two reporters came over and they said, did you really tell us?
Yeah.
Sure. What did he say? And I said, I really don't want to repeat it. They are now with doing pre-production. Pierce Brosnan is one, Thomas in this, and Orlando Bloom in it, and I think Kirsten Dunst just signed recently. So you know, it's been a fun adventure. So
When's it coming out, Mitch?
Year and a half, it looks like.
How close is it to the book?
Very close, except when, you know, Stephen thinks it shouldn't be. I've got some background in fencing, and so I'm doing part of the screenplay, the action sequences for it, and I just love the fencing sequences, and I love the fencing sequences in this. And you know, unfortunately, I was one of the few people who loved the fencing sequences, and to me, it's fascinating. And my editor said, "So can we cut it down from the 32 pages that you devoted to it to, you know, 4?" I said, well, I probably could, and they cut that down to 2.5. And Steve has cut it down to about, I don't know, 45 seconds. But yeah, it's very, very close to the book. It's a very accurate rendition. When something's wrong, they'll come running over. The actors will say, "They want me to say this. Would Father Thomas say that?" I think about it. No, I don't think so. So I'll do the rewrites, right on the set from time to time.
Now, are you the screenwriter?
I'm doing a very small portion of the screenplay. I mean, as much as they trust me, I don't think they're going to trust a $100 million movie to, first time newbie. So I'm consulting on the action fencing sequences, and I'm doing the scenes where, Matthew, the 17-year-old, what brings down a pass on the, the bad guys. And there's some military scenes in there as well where they replicate the battle, the flying wedge of the Battle of Thermopylae, and, coming down the pass and whatnot. So that's one of the scenes I'm writing as well.
I can relate about your being an adventurer because one thing I found out doing my Karloff, it's like kind of like a mystery story. Somebody would make a reference to something, and I think, well, wait, that would raise another question. So I look into this. For example, when I started writing Mrs. Karloff, she said, she wrote, "P.S. My husband and I spent 2 weeks in Atlanta when he appeared at a theater in the round there." Well, this isn't anything written about him. So I called the American Historical Society, I went to the library, I called the AJC. And it turned out that in the early 50s, at least, there were 2 hotels in town. One was the Ansley Hotel, and one was the Henry Grady Hotel. And atop the Ansley Hotel was a theater in the round. Well, it turned out that in 1950, Karloff came here and did the play on Borrowed Time, which was later made into a movie with Lionel Barrymore. Actually earlier, but anyway, what is? So he did the play on Borrowed Time. So on microfilm, I found reviews of that from the Constitution and the Journal. And I found out the director of this was 84, I found out the director of this production was still alive. He was 75 years old. So I wrote to him in London. He wrote me this letter almost about this big, and gave me a picture of the set from that show. It turned out he was British, but he was in Atlanta that summer of '50, directing a season of summer theater, and Karloff came to do On Borrowed Time. So he wrote me this long letter, gave me a picture of the set from that show, and then a couple of years later I went to London, and I told him I was coming, and I said, "Can I meet you?" And he said, "Sure." So I met him at 80 in his apartment in London, and he worked with Rex Harrison and Vivian Lee, and to sit in this man's living room, having tea for about half an hour, telling me about it, working with Boris Karloff almost 50 years earlier. That's the kind of thing that just amazes me about this whole process.
Wow. That's awesome. How many people here are writers themselves or trying to be writers? Okay, and how many people here don't have the first clue as to what to do once you write a book?
I like reading them. I like you guys write.
I'll relate basically the nuts and bolts of it, supplement me in as well. The best time, I think I mentioned to someone yesterday, to get an agent, unfortunately, is after you have a contract, in which case you think we don't need you at this point. But agents can be beneficial. You've got an uphill battle in terms of getting an agent as a new writer who's not written anything. And you have zero chance of getting one almost zero chance, let's say, if you don't have a completed work in hand. Now, when you submit, there are a bunch of books out there called How to Write Science Fiction, How to Create Original Characters, they're all cool. I mean, they're fine, but put together a one-page synopsis of your story on a professional letterhead, telling a little, and do a very nice cover letter as well, saying this is who I am, this is my background, these are my credits, professional credits. I mean, not you've written a fantasy book and you're a lawyer. That's nice, but they don't really jive. Send it out with the first 3 chapters, and I stress the first 3 chapters because my editor told me that she often gets chapters 1, 17, and 26 saying this is my best work. So if you're submitting to an editor, get the name of a live person to submit to. Call up, speak to them if you can, usually you can, then say, hey, we met each other at a con, we spoke on the phone in accordance with our conversation. Here is a sample of my work, my first 3 chapters, and a synopsis of what the book is about, and I include a self-addressed stamped envelope. If you don't do that, they are cheap beyond belief. If they love it, they might call you and talk to you. If they don't love it, you're never going to hear anything back from them if you don't get it in a self-addressed stamped envelope. Submit it on 20-pound white stock, not orange stock, not, with Courier font, Times Roman font, 1-inch margins around it, for God's sake, don't staple it. I'm saying it's based upon conversations with editors, because they like to.
There is actually there's a website, a simple website, which has a very long thing about manuscripts and that sort of thing. Jumping on you just a little bit here. The biggest thing to do if you're submitting to a publisher is to see if the publisher actually has their standards somewhere perfectly online. For example, do not submit 3 chapters to Bain. If you submit 3 chapters to Bain, it will go into the circular file. They won't even pull out the self-addressed stamped envelope. Why does slush get treated so crappily is a very good question. And the reason that slush gets treated so crappily is that they get so many manuscripts, and it is so logistically difficult to go through those manuscripts that they literally have it start piling up in the corner, stacking up, this high until it's sliding all over the place. And they go, okay, the slush pile is out of control. We're going to have a slush party. And they go to a convention with 400 of these things, and they sit in a room, starting after the con basically is shut down, and all the fans come in, and they rip these things open, and they look at the first page, and they go, oh, this person can't freaking write. And then they write a rejection, and they put it in the self-addressed stamped envelope, and they throw it into one of those little mailbox things, and it goes off. Bain does not actually do that, but I have run across it being done with other not so much book publishing. Tor is a little bit different. Most of the publishers these days will not accept unagented manuscripts. So you're in the classic dilemma. It's very, very difficult to get an agent if you don't have a sale. The publishers won't accept a manuscript if you don't have an agent. Bain accepts manuscripts if you don't have an agent, but I know people who have been waiting for 2 years for a response from Bain at this point. And I even know why it's going on, and it's so far away from where I'm at that I just don't even want to touch it, but I understand why everything's.
That's unagented work. And I stopped up at HarperCollins, the mighty HarperCollins, to, visit my editor one day, and there was a pile, I swear to you, she's 5'2", it was at least a hand's reach above her head. And I said, God, Daddy, this will take you the rest of your life to read. She goes, no, I'll finish it this weekend.
Yeah.
I said, how possibly? She goes, I can tell them first 2 pages, 3 pages maybe. And she goes, all the weird ones, purple text over there, the colored, writing. She goes, I don't even read those.
Yeah.
So I suggest to you that there is a subconscious psychological reaction that takes place amongst editors and in the publishing industry, which, if you go into court, you want your lawyer to look like a lawyer, you want your doctor to wear a white coat. They want their manuscripts to look a certain way. And if something's out of the ordinary, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll get special treatment. It'll usually get adverse treatment. But there used to be on the box.
Huh?
There's a story that goes around the agents in New York about the box. And it was this magnificently carved mahogany box with a top to it, and you opened it up and it had a glowing death mask on the inside. And they opened it up, cool. It's like getting a fruitcake, right? And this box made the round to all the houses in New York, and made the round to all the editors. And I think Don Moss eventually got it. And the box is sitting in his office, and I asked him about it. And Don, who submitted that? Oh, 2 ladies who had a screenplay. I said, well, did it get published? No, but it's a cool box. I guess the point is, stay as close as you can to the norm. You tend to violate the norms at your own,
Yeah, I kind of went by, I guess, the standard rules. I mean, I queried as late 80s, 86, 87, when I was still working on this. I must have queried 24 publishers. I looked them all up to see if they handle biographies, film books, that kind of thing. And I got about 24 rejections. Nobody was interested in this. And then, let's see, so I just kept working at it. And then a few years ago, I would go to cons and I would look to see, okay, who's publishing these books they're selling at the con. And I guess about a year and a half ago, I found one outfit down in Florida, and the guy made me an offer, but I refused it. With apologies to Mario Puzo. Because I couldn't accept it because he would have profited from it more than I would have. And I said, no, thank you. And so I got on the website of the Horror Writers America, and that's where I found Publish America. And emailed them and said, would you be all interested in this? They wrote back the next day and said, send us the entire manuscript. And 2 weeks to the late day from when I mailed it, they wrote back and said, we want to publish this. So after 4 years, I'd sold it in 2 weeks.
Now, I noticed some very interesting reactions from the two gentlemen up here. You said they would have, the publishers would have profited more than I would have, and the two authors over here went like that. What was that reaction?
I didn't quite understand it.
Oh, well, they, the guy doesn't do royalties.
It doesn't do royalties.
No, I'm serious, he does not do royalties.
Why do you
He
do
prefers to give you like a base amount up front. He's paying you for the book, in other words, and he'll publish it, and he'll keep on selling it, and you don't get a dime more.
Well, most books don't. The way that royalties work is, for example, it's a breakdown. Up to a certain level, it's 8%. Then it goes to hardcover up to a certain level, it's 10%. Then it goes to 12.5%. Then it goes to 15% on my royalties. Okay. Now, if I sell 5,000 books, the royalties on that will be about $5,000. Okay. On the other hand, if I sell 60,000 books, the royalties on it will be about $100,000. The point is that when I first started out, my first advance was $5,000. It was on Him Before Battle. That's a standard advance. Now, Him Before Battle earned out, but it is very, very unusual for a book like yours to actually earn out.
Yes.
At a $5,000 advance. Publishers, that's one of the reasons that publishers don't really care that much about slush. Here's the good thing to slush. Okay, the good thing to slush is I opened up the slush pile and I found Mitchell Graham. Okay, I opened up the slush pile and I found Mitchell Graham. I started Mitchell Graham, and here he is, big name author. Okay. I was the first person to find Mitchell Graham. That's one of the things editors want to be able to say. So that's the important point of the slush pile. The downside of the slush pile is that for every Mitchell Graham, you find 10 to 15 people that you think are going to be the next Mitchell Graham and don't. I do not know which publisher you're talking about. I don't know exactly what the terms were, but in all honesty, it's very, very common to have that sort of situation where the Star Wars and Star Trek novels, okay, you get your advance, period. That's all you get, okay? You don't get any royalties, beyond your advance. It's going to be how well they anticipate it selling based on who you are. Some of those advances can be good, and the nice thing about them is you can usually crank out a Star Wars or Star Trek